Hi, I'm Pastor Sami, and I'm so glad you've decided to join me again for another special message about this week's Gospel reading. This week's Gospel is called The Parable of the Tenants in the Vineyard, and it's a hard story to read. But here's what I want you to remember. Jesus, when he taught about God, he taught about God's love, God's grace, and God's forgiveness above all else. But there are some other people who emphasized God's wrath and God's anger and God's judgment above all else. And there's nothing that brings out Jesus' anger like people who don't teach about God's love, grace, and forgiveness as the most important things. Ironically, but it's true. Jesus couldn't stand it. When there are people who made God off as some villain, Jesus couldn't stand it. And he made sure that they didn't teach that anymore. I think sometimes we can be afraid that when we teach about our faith or talk about our faith, that we're going to mess it up. So we keep it to ourselves, or we treat it like some precious, expensive piece of crystal that we have to keep up on a top shelf, put way out of sight and out of mind. I have something that's really precious to me, and that's this quilt. It was made by my husband's grandmother, his nanny, and it wasn't made for me or for my husband. It was actually made for her first great-grandchild. But the thing is that nanny died a month before her first great-grandchild was born. So this gift was given to our daughter, but she never actually got to meet my husband's nanny. This quilt then it's priceless to us because it's this strong connection that she gets to have to my husband's family, to his grandmother who he loved so much. And she's the only great-grandchild who has a gift like this. And so I feel like it's so important that I make sure that it's taken care of and that she has it to enjoy for a long, long time. So I usually keep it folded up and stuffed into a pillowcase where it will be safe. But a couple weeks ago, I realized that's not what Nanny would have wanted. I think Nanny would have wanted us to have it out, for Susanna to be wrapped up and to feel its warmth and the warmth of Nanny's love for her, and that she'd get to play on it, and then she'd get to look at it and all the pretty colors and feel how soft it is. And she doesn't get to do any of that if the quilt is put away. So even though we risk that maybe something will get spilled on it or something could happen to it, now we keep this quilt out in the living room where we get to enjoy it every single day. I think that's a lot of like how God wants us to treat our faith. Yeah, maybe it is possible that somebody could ask us a question about our faith and we wouldn't know the answer, or that we'd say something that actually isn't correct. Or maybe we would make somebody else feel uncomfortable when we share our faith. Or there could be an awkward silence, or maybe it could change our relationship with them. I guess that's possible. But what Jesus wants us to know is that when we teach about God's love, grace, and forgiveness for all people, that it is worth the risk of maybe something not going perfectly. It is worth the risk that maybe you would get to be the one who tells somebody for the very first time that they are loved by God, the creator of the universe, and that there's nothing that can separate them from God's love. Nothing in the whole world. That is worth the risk. I hope you will take the risk, taking your faith out, taking it out and wearing it and sharing it and enjoying its warmth and the symbol of love that it is every single day. That is why you were given that gift of faith. I hope you'll take that risk.